Hi, class. My name is Darla Kennedy. Effective retention strategy has emerged as one of the most critical strategic human resources initiatives for all companies across all industries. Although all companies do experience turnover during the normal course of business, in the ebook Reducing Turnover, PwC states that most employees who resign, a whopping 77%, reveal in exit surveys that their employer could have retained them. This alarming statistic reveals the need for effective strategic retention planning. Today, I'd like to share some information with you on how to use HR metrics to measure the effectiveness of retention strategies, as well as how to ensure efforts are focused on actions that matter to employees. As far as our agenda goes, I'll discuss HR metrics and data, key metrics to measure retention, measuring the effectiveness of the retention strategies, and focus on elements that are meaningful to employees. In his book, Data Driven HR, Bernard Marr asserts that there are four uses for HR data: making better decisions both internally in HR and company wide, improving operations both internally in HR and company wide, understanding customers, which for our purposes today, our customers will be employees, and this will be the focus of the majority of our conversation. And then finally, monetizing data. When it comes to strategic retention plans, utilizing data driven insight to understand employees is critical. Employee behaviors, preferences, and satisfaction are the basis on which effective retention plans are created. HR data is then used to produce HR metrics. According to the Society for Human Resources Management, metrics are measures of the effectiveness, value, and/or cost of a particular program. When I think of metrics required to support retention, I group them into two data sets: transactional history and employee feedback. A transactional history metric is one that tells us what has already happened, to whom, when, and where it happened, and usually gives us a high level about why it happened. Historical metrics provide us with a plethora of information. For example, we can find out how many employees are leaving, how long employees are staying, the internal rate of transfer, average compensation for a particular job, etc., etc. This data is pulled from the Human Resources Information System. Employee feedback provides insight on what employees are thinking and feeling. It provides us with a sense of employee opinions about what the company is doing well, what can be improved, challenges faced day to day, and the level of satisfaction felt. This data comes from employee surveys and exit interviews. Using insight gained from these two types of metrics, companies can strategically shape what happens in the future and measure the effectiveness of the retention plan. Indeed recommends the following as key retention metrics to track. Retention rate. This metric shows the percentage of employees retained over a given period of time. It gives you an overall sense of the volume of employees staying with the company. The next two metrics, involuntary turnover rate and voluntary turnover rate, show the percentage of employees leaving over a period of time. When specific termination reason is added to these metrics, it highlights issues to address as part of the retention planning. For example, a large percentage of employees being terminated involuntarily due to work rule violations would reveal that additional training on workplace policy is required. Similarly, a large volume of voluntary terminations that cite pay as the reason for leaving indicates compensation should be evaluated. Talent turnover rate assesses the population of employees leaving the company by performance rating segment. This metric provides insight into the value of employees leaving the company, a higher value being placed on top performers and a lower value being placed on low performers. Employee satisfaction is a metric that measures the level of engagement, purpose, and overall happiness employees feel. Length of service shows how long employees are staying with the company. And cost of turnover is a complicated metric that demonstrates the price that the company pays to replace employees that leave. A large amount of data goes into this calculation, including things like cost of recruiting, training a new employee, the time managers spend interviewing, and any overtime incurred by the department that must be worked until the position is filled. To gauge the effectiveness of retention plans, companies need to use these metrics and segmentation to deep dive into the data. Each of the metrics we just discussed can be looked at from different perspectives in order to gain a better understanding of the termination events occurring within the organization. For example, companies can calculate retention rate not only by company, but also by line of business, department, team, or manager. Another example of useful data segmentation is measuring satisfaction of employees by grade, by management versus non management, and by performance rating. One thing to note is that organizational context definitely matters when you're interpreting data. In the textbook Strategic Human Resources Management, it is noted that some turnover is likely inevitable, but not necessarily problematic. Being able to diagnose the extent to which turnover is a problem in a particular organization is critical. This is done using insight provided by the metrics. Furthermore, that text states that a common misconception about employee turnover is that a simple one-size-fits-all retention strategy is most effective. In reality, context-specific evidence-based strategies are more effective. There are two types of retention strategies overall: systematic and targeted. Systematic strategies are designed to decrease turnover across the entire company and tend to address items meaningful to non-high performers and hourly employees, such as pay and benefits. Targeted strategies are designed to encourage retention of specific populations. Dr. Kim Jamson recommends thinking of retention and turnover through the lens of regrettable losses. She recommends doubling down on high potentials with not only a separate retention strategy, but a development strategy as well. In a study on targeted employee retention published by John Hasknecht and his employees, it was concluded that high performers tend to stay because of clear linkage between inputs and outcomes, fair treatment, future opportunities, and because they enjoy their work and relationships with others at work. Combining systematic and targeted retention strategies allows companies to focus efforts on interventions that are most important to employees. Just to summarize what we've discussed today, HR data from the Human Resources Information System, as well as employee feedback from surveys and interviews, form the basis for HR metrics. HR metrics are used to gauge the effectiveness of retention strategy and should be sliced and diced by segments to get a true picture of what is happening in the organization. Retention strategies based on evidence provided by metrics are most effective. And finally, companies should use both systematic and targeted retention strategies. I appreciate your attention and have a great day.